Hey, good morning, Grace Church family. So good to be with you again this morning. Thanks for taking the time for another staff devotional. Hope you're all doing well. And again, just hanging in there as we continue in our lockdown here in Ontario. My devotions this week, I was reading through a well-known passage that came from Psalm 139. I know many of you are very familiar with this wonderful psalm. And I was reflecting on how it talked about God's presence with us. And that's something that I think I've been just really using to help me deal with the pandemic and trusting that God is sovereign and in control in this situation, and that He's with us. He's with us in the midst of it all. And so that's been a comfort to me. And so I thought I'd share that psalm or part of that psalm with you this morning, just as an encouragement as well, when it comes to just how are we hanging in during this pandemic and persevering through some of these times when we're isolated from one another. So let me read the first 12 verses here in Psalm 139. It's a psalm of David. O Lord, you have searched me and know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You hem me in behind and before and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it. Where shall I go from your spirit, or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to the heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and light about me be night, even darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as day, for darkness is as light to you. What a great psalm that is for us to be comforted. And it reminds me just how much God knows about us. He knows everything about us. The psalmist talks about He knows about our coming and our going. He knows when we're awake and when we're asleep. He even knows our very thoughts, and He knows what's going to come out of our mouth even before we say it. Sometimes I wish He would put a plug in it, right, for me, so that I don't say dumb things. And then the psalmist describes something that should just bring such incredible comfort to us, especially as children of God, as followers of Jesus. He says here in the psalm, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? And I guess they're rhetorical questions really for us, because their answer is nowhere. We can't. There's no place that we can get away, in a sense, from God's presence with us. Now, that can be a concerning thing if we're not walking with the Lord, if we're living in sin, if we're doing things that don't align with God's will for us. Then yeah, we can't flee from God. He's there with us. He sees all those things, and that can be scary to think about. But the psalmist here is really talking more about assurance and comfort and the blessing of knowing that there's no place that we can go where God is not there with us. And it's not just physical places the psalmist is talking about here. In verse 8, he talks about, if I ascend to the heavens, you are there. If I go down, if I make my bed in Sheol, it's a reference to hell, if you will. It says you are there. And obviously that's psalmist not talking about, I'm going to go to heaven to see God, or God's going to be down in hell. He's metaphorically talking here about no matter where I go, God, you're always there. And I think we can even apply that metaphor in a sense to sometimes when life is wonderful and we're feeling we're on a high, we're on cloud 9, if you will, or when life turns really down for us and we are in despair and discouraged, we feel like life is hell, or we feel like we're in the depths of the sea, as the psalmist says. Even in those incredible highs and lows of life, God is there with us. He's there to comfort us. He's there to guide us. He's there to heal us. He's there to protect us, to lead us. And that's the comfort that comes with knowing that we can never flee or escape the presence of God, that He's always with us. And especially, I want to use this psalm as an encouragement for you if you're experiencing this incredible discouragement because of the fact that we're isolated from one another. Yes, it's difficult to live in isolation because of a pandemic where we need to protect one another, especially those who are vulnerable. But may this psalm remind you that you're never alone. You're never isolated, because God's presence is always there with you. And I hope that's an encouragement to you. But then the psalmist ends the psalm with an incredible challenge as well for all of us. Let me read to you verses 23 and 24. The psalmist ends with, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." You see, the psalmist is challenging us and reminding us, if you will, that God's presence, yes, is with us wherever we are, in whatever state of joy or despair we're experiencing. But ultimately, the psalmist is challenging us to be living in a right relationship with Him, so that no matter what the circumstances are, that we know that God is with us and that we are in a right relationship with Him. And so the psalmist challenges us to open our hearts to God and say, "Hey, God, search me. Search my heart. Know what my motives are. Search my thoughts. Help my thoughts to be pure, and see if there's any sin in my life that is distracting me from you or leading me astray from following you, Lord." And then he opens himself up to say, "God, put me back on the right path. Put me back on the way that leads to everlasting life." And that's, I think, when we have the most rewarding experience of God's presence with us, is when we are in a right relationship with Him. So that's the encouragement for today, but also the challenge for us. You see, God loves us and His presence is always with us. And because of that, let's walk in obedience. Let's walk in obedience to be faithfully serving Him in this week to come. So I hope that, again, is a great blessing to you today. And persevere in this time of pandemic, because we know that God's presence is with us. Have a great week, and we'll see you again next time.